It's a surprise, Tanya. We're going with Mom. The confident voice of my husband echoed in the entranceway. While glancing at my happy husband and his mother, I couldn't contain my surprise. Naturally so. After all, this trip was our honeymoon, so it was natural to be shocked to hear that my husband planned to bring his mother along. Confused by my husband's statement, while I was thinking about what to say, he made a face like he was chewing on a bitter bug and voiced his dissatisfaction. "What's wrong? Aren't you happy?" he asked. There was no way I could be. He should have understood that. After all, there was a deep rift between me and his mother, which I had repeatedly complained about. His mother seemed unable to forgive me, the woman who stole her precious son. Every time she saw me, she would unleash obvious sarcasm. Especially troublesome was her act of being the perfect mother when my husband was around. Because of this, even if I expressed how difficult it was for me, my husband would not believe me. Still, it was clear that I had difficulties with his mother. Yet, to proceed with such a plan, what was he thinking? "Did you book Mom's plane ticket? Is the hotel reserved?" I asked, and my husband looked perplexed. "Eh? I thought I'd book it later." "That's impossible. When do you think we booked ours?" I raised my voice. Of course, there was no reservation for his mother. It was baffling for them to think of having her accompany us during the peak tourist season without a reservation. When I explained this point to him, he snorted as usual. "Then, could you give us all the tickets?" For a moment, I didn't grasp the meaning of his words and asked for confirmation, to which he repeated, displeased. "If there's no ticket for my mother, then give me yours. I paid for the trip, so I have that right." The smug face of my mother-in-law entered my field of vision, and I was shocked. I could only be astonished at her attitude. I cannot understand at all what he is thinking. This is not just a regular trip, it's our honeymoon. I can't believe he would plan such an important trip with his own mother. Of course, I would want to avoid even a normal trip with my mother-in-law. As I stood with my mouth open in surprise, my mother-in-law had a smug look on her face. She seems very pleased that her son is prioritizing her. "Come on, hurry up. There shouldn't be a problem since I paid for it," he says. Does he think that just because he paid, he can do whatever he wants? As I ponder this, the cost of the trip suddenly comes to mind. By the way, about the cost of this trip. My name is Tanya. I am 28 years old and work for a company run by my father. Initially treated as a nepotistic hire, my serious attitude and results were recognized, and gradually the people around me began to value me. Nevertheless, because of the fact that I am part of a business-owning family, malicious rumors are sometimes whispered, and occasionally they hurt my heart. In such a situation, my husband Glenn has been my support. We are the same age and have been exchanging opinions frequently as colleagues in the same team since we joined. It did not take long for our relationship to start. While Glenn efficiently handled his duties and contributed to improving performance, he was also trusted by my father. When we announced our marriage, my father immediately agreed. "Glenn, huh? I've heard about you. take care of my daughter." "Of course, I'll make her happy," my husband replied. Watching that exchange, I felt the glow of the moment. At that time, my father was timing the future handing over of the company, and within the company, there was anticipation that Glenn might be the next president. He thought that the sudden marriage of his daughter could be a chance for generational change in the company. Although there was a possibility of entrusting the management to someone outside, having a capable son-in-law would surely have reassured my father. I am not good at putting myself forward, but if a competent son-in-law were to take over management, that would be the best outcome. I suppose that's what he thought. Although my father did not discuss this directly with us, we often talked about business management during meals together, so my husband and I anticipated that it would happen someday. My husband's father has already passed away, and his mother lives alone in her marital home. My husband deeply loves his mother, and during our courtship, if she called for help, he would rush to her immediately. Since she raised him alone, I have always supported, with a smile, my husband's desire to repay her. I think my husband, who can respect his mother like this, is a wonderful person. I was proud to be with such a person. However, since we got married and started living together, I have begun to feel more doubts. "I'm going to see Mom for a bit." This phrase has become my husband's standard line. And he visits his mother every week. "Is your mother unwell?" I ask with concern, but the answer that comes back is that she is not. "Tanya, don't worry about it. It's important to spend some time alone occasionally." Initially, he spoke kindly like that, but recently he has stopped showing such attitudes. On a Saturday morning, I spoke to my husband, who was cheerfully humming a song. "Are you going to your mother's house today?" The good mood changed instantly, and my husband stopped what he was doing and took a deep breath. "Why do you say it like that?" He reacted to my question with irritation visible on his face. Surprised, I shrugged my shoulders. I might have sounded accusatory without realizing it. It was already said. He glared at me and said, "Mom is lonely by herself. I'm going because you have difficulties with her, understand?" I couldn't hide my agitation at my husband's words. It's true that I have difficulties with my mother-in-law. Of course, it wasn't like that at first. She is the woman who brought my beloved husband into this world. I sincerely wish to cherish her. However, affection does not always come back equally from the other side. My mother-in-law saw me as the woman who stole her son. When my husband was away, starting from our first greeting, she would continuously throw cold words at me. The first incident happened right after my husband had gone to the restroom. Her friendly expression suddenly changed, and she scrutinized me from top to bottom, as if assessing my worth. "So, you are the president's daughter. You don't seem like much." Shocked by her words, I was surprised by the drastic change in my mother-in-law's attitude. She continued to spit venom. "You dare to show up here calmly after stealing Glenn from me. Don't misunderstand, I do not acknowledge you at all." Seeing my surprise, she snorted mockingly and made a crude slurping sound with her tea. It was as if it was natural that no tea was offered to me. Um, Mother-in-law. Don't call me mother-in-law. It's unpleasant. I pondered why I had to be met with such hostility by someone I was meeting for the first time. But when I tried to speak up, I was immediately rejected by my mother-in-law. I felt helpless, and as I was confused by the situation, I heard my husband's returning footsteps. The drastically changed mother-in-law once again smiled and offered tea, as if she had forgotten what had happened earlier. "Sorry, I forgot to offer you tea," she said with a light laugh. And when my husband returned, she chuckled, "Mother, you hadn't served the tea yet." "Glenn, your fiancé is very charming." "Sorry for forgetting to serve the tea," said my mother-in-law with a smile. Then she added, "Tanya, don't hesitate to call me mother-in-law." A chill ran down my spine. Since then, my mother-in-law continues to throw harsh words at me only when my husband is not around. It's like she has a double personality. It seems that my husband cannot see her true nature. Even if I talk to him, he dismisses it with "my mother would never do such a thing." He says, "If you're that uncomfortable, you don't have to force yourself to meet her," and he doesn't believe me at all. Initially, I desperately appealed, but eventually, I grew tired of him defending his mother and began avoiding meeting her. Now, I only visit my in-laws' home when absolutely necessary. My husband might think I hate his mother. "Make sure to lock the door when you leave," he said, and today, as usual, he left without looking back. I tried to reach out, saying, "Wait," but missed him. His back blurred through my tears. After the conflict about his mother, he did not return home. There are moments when it feels like his mother is more important to him than I am. Aside from the issue with his mother, Glenn is a wonderful spouse. When I am having trouble with work, he quickly notices and helps, and he actively shares household chores. This is despite his own busy work schedule. It's a relief that he acknowledges there's no need for unnecessary meetings. Holding these thoughts, I browse through the travel brochures. I shake my head and decide to focus on the plans I currently have. It's the preparation for our long-awaited honeymoon. During this trip, I should be able to forget about his mother and have fun. At least, there won't be any sudden calls from my husband. I consider where to go, keeping in pace with my husband, who has just become the team leader for a new project. If possible, I would like to indulge in luxury on this occasion. While turning the pages and feeling tempted, I soon give up on that thought. I left all the preparations to you, so at least I want the payment to come from my account, my husband said. I had intended to pay for the honeymoon together, but he just laughed, not willing to listen. I thought it wasn't right for him alone to bear the entire cost, so I decided to pay for part of it myself. Additionally, being the president's daughter, the sarcasm from my mother-in-law about being extravagant only escalates, which is tough. Thinking about it, I can't help but give a wry smile. Just when I had resolved to focus, thoughts of my mother-in-law invaded my mind again. Let's stop this, I tell myself, and to change my mood, I put the brochure aside and start preparing dinner for my husband, who will be back soon. Then the morning of our honeymoon arrived. As I was bustling with preparations, the doorbell suddenly rang. "Yes, come in," I said as I opened the door, only to be shocked by the sight before me. Mother-in-law. There she stood, dressed in flamboyant clothes with a large suitcase in tow. Noticing my voice, my husband peeked out. "Mom, you're early." While my husband greeted her with a smile, my mother-in-law didn't even glance at me. Unable to hide my confusion, I asked, "Early? What do you mean?" Just as we were about to leave for our honeymoon together, what could her large luggage imply? Could it be that she intended to stay at our house during our honeymoon? Tormented by this thought, my husband cheerfully announced, "It's a surprise. Mom is coming with us." Really? As my husband clapped his hands in joy, a strange sound escaped me in surprise. "What are you thinking?" I pressed. "Wait, what does this mean?" I asked in shock, and my husband declared happily, "It's a surprise. Mom is coming along." As I stood unable to hide my bewilderment, my husband proudly put his arm around his mother's shoulder, saying, "It'll be more fun with Mom along." Seeing this, my mother-in-law smiled smilingly at me. As I incredulously asked, "Wait a minute. Isn't a honeymoon supposed to be just for the couple? Shouldn't we at least have discussed this beforehand?" I tried to keep calm despite the confusion. Even as I was certain I wasn't wrong, my husband seemed to doubt my words. Why can't we understand each other? I wondered. Furthermore, my mother-in-law, seemingly enjoying my distress, hummed to herself. Why must such discord arise on the day we leave for our honeymoon? Doing something like this as a surprise, what were you thinking? I demanded angrily, to which my husband replied, "It's fine because I paid for everything, right?" Noticing my astonishment, he frowned. "No, it's not fine." Could it be that his offer to pay for the trip wasn't just to comfort me but to silence any objections about bringing his mother along? "Wait. That's not going to work," I objected, causing both my husband and mother-in-law to become visibly displeased. "Why won't it work?" my husband asked, and my mother-in-law childishly taunted, "Tanya doesn't want to travel with me, does she?" I felt a headache coming on. The issue isn't about that. "Glenn, what about your mother's plane ticket? Is the hotel booked?" I questioned, causing my husband to look perplexed. "Eh? I thought we could book it later." "That's impossible. When do you think we booked our tickets and hotel?" I raised my voice. Did he really think this could go smoothly without any planning? Though I tried to avoid luxury, the hotel we chose was decent. Especially now, during a major holiday period. There's no way the flights and hotels have availability now. As I pressed the issue, my husband naturally reached out. Then, "Could you give me all your tickets?" For a moment, I couldn't grasp the meaning of his words and asked for clarification, to which he repeated, annoyed, "If there's no ticket for my mother, then give me yours." I paid for the trip, so I have the right to do that. The smug face of my mother-in-law entered my field of vision, and I was shocked. What's happening? What am I being told? My mother went through the trouble of preparing, so I've decided that this trip will be just her and me. We'll go with you some other time, that should be fine. The ease with which my husband favored his mother left me unable to follow. Does he think it's okay if I'm not there? I'll say it again. This is our honeymoon. Just for me and my husband. Being forced to hand over the plans to my mother-in-law, who appeared out of nowhere, is something I cannot accept. He says his mother prepared for it, but that doesn't matter. If he wants to maintain peace, his mother should step back. Yet, I was utterly dismayed as my husband continued to tell me to give up. Come on, hurry up. There shouldn't be a problem since I paid for it, he says. Actually, I was going to keep this a secret. Suppressing a headache, I sighed deeply. Actually, my father is covering the cost of this trip, not you. So it's strange for you to demand the tickets, isn't it? Upon hearing this, my husband appeared bewildered, as if he couldn't accept the fact. That makes sense. He thought he had paid, which is why he could be so assertive. Why would your father do such a thing? He began to question in surprise. I stared at him coldly. My father decided to pay the honeymoon expenses as a gift so we could save up for our future. He had even told me to keep it a secret, considering my husband's pride. Why did you keep this a secret from me? My husband raged, his face turning red with anger. My mother-in-law, too, seemed shocked to learn that my father had funded the trip, and as I listened to my husband's angry voice, my heart rapidly cooled. I had endured my mother-in-law's nagging and my husband's bias towards her for too long, and I finally ran out of patience. If you two want to go, then return the money to my father and cancel the reservations. Please arrange your own funding and start over. Ignoring my husband and mother-in-law's attempts to stop me, I quickly grabbed my bags and left the house. This was no joke. It was not right to use my father's money for people like them. Since I was busy and had been left to handle all the reservations, I had booked the flights and hotel in my name. Because of this, I was able to cancel everything swiftly and got into a taxi. Instead of heading to the planned airport, I gave the driver my parents' home address. When a daughter who was supposed to be on her honeymoon returned home with large luggage, my father was shocked. As I explained the situation, my father exploded in anger. What is this story? Is this some kind of joke? The constant calls from my husband only fueled my father's rage further. I was furious as well. This conversation cemented my decision. Dad, I'm considering a divorce. When I conveyed my resolve, my father calmed his anger and comforted me gently. Without saying a word, he just gently stroked my back, letting me feel his warmth. I'm sorry, Dad. As I let these words slip through my tears, my father firmly grasped my hand. The next day, my husband came to my parents' house with a box of sweets as an apology. Just as I was about to turn him away at the gate, my father intervened. If you're considering divorce, we need to talk properly. Let's hear his true intentions directly. Let him in the house. While I had intended to consult a lawyer, I followed my father's advice and welcomed him. As soon as my husband saw my father at the door, he immediately apologized. I felt irritated at the sight of my husband pretending to be innocent in front of my father. As my husband continued to apologize, I sighed, and my father urged me to lead him to the sitting room. "President, I apologize for the inconvenience caused by this disturbance," my husband said, starting to apologize with his face down on the table, even before the greetings were over. Occasionally, even in private, my husband calls my father President. He used to joke that it had become a habit, but at the moments when he calls my father President, he seems to adopt a business-like attitude. Perhaps it's because he's used to it at work. His practiced way of apologizing was disturbingly perfect. "What is this apology for?" my father pressed, sighing repeatedly. His emotions were the same as mine. My husband just kept repeating, "I'm sorry for causing a disturbance." This was not an apology to me. It was just an insult. As my panicked husband tried to say something, I interrupted him and presented the divorce papers. "Do you know how to fill out these divorce papers? My part is already completed. Please refer to it." Speaking with deliberate politeness, my husband's face turned pale as he looked at the divorce papers. "Wait, Tanya, divorce." It felt like the first time since he arrived at the house that he actually looked at me seriously. I have always been second to him. "That should be fine, right? Glenn, you have your mother." If that is his attitude, I am also prepared to act businesslike and refuse any attempts at reconciliation. "What are you talking about? Why bring up my mother here? She was looking forward to that trip too. We can go on another trip together some other time, Tanya." Aghast at his lack of understanding, I retorted, "Any time? What does that mean? It was supposed to be our honeymoon." My body shook and I bit my lip in pain from the awfulness. Why would any husband want to bring his own mother on his honeymoon? Where in the world does that even happen? I asked myself, sickened by the thought. Yet, as if to worsen the situation, my husband stubbornly persisted. "It was just a suggestion to go together at first. Wasn't it you who said there were no flights or hotels available?" Glenn said. "Think about it. How could we possibly prepare for such a last-minute plan?" I replied, but it seemed like Glenn didn't understand at all. Unbelievably, he was serious. Glenn showed his anger openly and raised his voice. "Are you saying to send my mother back even though she was looking forward to this trip too?" At that moment, my father intervened and calmed the situation. "Let's end this now," my father said calmly, and after a silence, he shook his head in disappointment. "Glenn, I'm really disappointed," my father said, and Glenn suddenly called him President and straightened his posture. My father watched Glenn standing there with a gaze filled with deep sadness and disappointment. In the heavy silence, my father spoke. "Why did you choose your mother over Tanya in such a situation?" That question weighed heavily on Glenn. Searching for words, Glenn stammered, visibly sweating from nervousness. Even though Glenn could be assertive towards me at times, he could never defy my father. My father continued, "A honeymoon is supposed to be for the couple. You could have gone with your mother any time after that, right? Wasn't it true when you said you loved my daughter?" To this, Glenn shouted, "I'm not lying. I just wanted to treat my mother as important as her." At this sudden outburst, my father looked sternly at Glenn for the first time. "Even if it makes Tanya sad, is that okay?" he pressed, and Glenn lost his words, stammering. Then, trembling, he said, "I'm sorry," but his clenched hands clearly showed the humiliation he felt. His apology was because it was necessary, not because he truly thought the situation was wrong. He was apologizing because my father, the president, was angry, not because he felt the need himself. "Glenn, you are a capable person," my father said, and Glenn momentarily showed a relieved expression, but soon realized he had misunderstood. My father's gaze was icy like a midwinter lake, piercing Glenn with increasing sternness. "However, even if you are good at your job, a person who does not cherish their family can never be trusted," my father declared with a stern expression, emphasizing his words by attempting to hand a pen to Glenn. At this gesture, Glenn visibly shivered, showing signs of deep fear. "Please wait. Please, let's avoid a divorce." "I will change my heart," Glenn pleaded, continuing to refuse to take the pen. Seeing this, my father forcibly took his hand, made him grip the pen, and said sternly, "You should not be apologizing to me." Shaken by these words, Glenn then turned to me, beginning to plead for help. "Tanya, please do something. Please, anything but divorce," he said as he moved to my feet from my father, clinging to my legs and looking up imploringly. "I will prioritize Tanya from now on," he vowed forcefully, but his words felt emptily hollow, as if his tears had already dried up. I could faintly sense the contempt for me hidden behind his words. "Please. If we divorce, I won't be able to pay off the debts." Glenn blurted this out in panic. Confused, I asked, "Debts? What are you talking about?" repeating the new information I had just heard. Then, suddenly recoiling from my feet, he covered his mouth and showed a look of regret. Overwhelmed by the situation, my father and I just silently stared at him. Amidst the tension, Glenn stuttered, well," and finally, gathering his resolve to speak to us, he began, "So, it's about." When the shocking truth was revealed with his fearful demeanor, my father and I were so astounded that all we could do was hold our heads in disbelief. Incredibly, Glenn and his mother had been confident that the position of president was almost certainly theirs, and had been spending recklessly without any moderation. The reason he visited his mother's house almost weekly was also to enjoy a lavish lifestyle with her. "The more I hear, the less I find any reason to keep this man as your husband," Tanya, my father said in disgust, too disappointed to find the words. Amidst this, Glenn finally pleaded earnestly, "Please wait. If I am divorced, how am I supposed to live starting tomorrow?" His continuous apologies, repeated over and over, looked almost mechanical, like a child's toy moving automatically, and were even comical in their desperation. "That has nothing to do with us," I responded coldly, simply waiting for Glenn to sign the divorce papers. Deciding there was no value in further discussion, my father and I quietly decided to drink coffee. Naturally, we did not offer any coffee to Glenn. Though somewhat forcibly written, the divorce was finalized after all the legal procedures were successfully completed. The lawyer my father had hired was extremely capable, and my detailed diary greatly helped the negotiations, ensuring the process proceeded very smoothly. Additionally, when we claimed alimony, including the costs of the canceled honeymoon, there was a request from the other side, through their lawyer, for a reduction. However, my father immediately rejected that proposal, and I couldn't help but laugh when I heard his decision. As for Glenn, rumors of our divorce spread rapidly throughout the company, resulting in a complete change in the atmosphere around him, making it uncomfortable. Consequently, he decided to resign in haste. Since it was a resignation of his own volition, his severance pay was not substantial, and he ended up using all his modest savings to cover the alimony and his debts. As a result, he is now living a very modest life. Regarding his mother, she has fallen ill and is completely bedridden. It seems she's managing to get by with part-time jobs and has been contacting former colleagues for financial assistance, although the truth of these stories is uncertain. Now, these tales have become the subject of jokes at drinking parties. As for myself, my father has finally decided to retire from his position as president, and with substantial support from other employees, it is highly likely that I will take over as the next president. Although I initially hesitated to take on the role due to my discomfort with leading, my father's rare expression of vulnerability, wishing to entrust the company to someone reliable, has renewed my determination. I feel a responsibility to fulfill the expectation my father has placed on me. Initially reluctant, it seems I have inherited managerial talent from my father. Thanks to his continued support as chairman, our company's performance is gradually but steadily improving. With this newfound confidence, I have been increasingly approached at various events for CEOs. I have not yet considered starting a new romance, but a good time to start a new phase of life may be approaching.
You've always been completely dependent on our parents. It's you who keeps causing trouble for our mom. Stop blaming us without recognizing your own faults. When I criticize my brother, Joey, who keeps staying at home, he turns around and blames me instead. I am working properly and contributing to the household finances. When I argue back, Joey snorts in derision. What's the point in being proud over such a trivial amount? Ultimately, as the eldest son, I will inherit this house. If you have a problem with it, then just get the hell out. Really, if you weren't here, we could live more comfortably. Joey and I will take care of the in-laws, so you don't need to stay here anymore. Just get out. Vanessa also sneered coldly, looking down on me. After all, it's obvious that our excuse of just until we find a new place was a lie. Since we've been accepted as family, it's your loss. So, get out of here. Joey waved his hand at me as if to shoo away an annoyance. Their attitude brought my anger to a boiling point. It was because of the money I earned that Joey and his wife were able to live comfortably, yet they refused to acknowledge this fact and insult me, treating me as if I'm unemployed. By now, my sympathy for them had completely vanished. Fine, I'll leave. When I said this, Joey and his wife smiled with satisfaction. Mandy, are you okay? Having witnessed everything, my mother asked me worriedly. I'm fine. Actually, there's something I want to talk to you about. With that, I proceed with a plan I've had for a while. I am Mandy. This year, I turned 31. During my childhood, I was weaker than other kids, frequently in and out of the hospital with asthma and pneumonia. This made attending school regularly difficult, and I felt out of place among my peers. I had an older brother, Joey, 2 years my senior, with our parents alternating visits during my hospital stays. Joey often found himself alone at home, leading our parents to regret making him feel so alone. Initially, Joey was concerned about my health, but as our parents spent more and more time with me, his attitude towards me gradually worsened. Why is it always Mandy who gets all the attention? Pay attention to me too, not just Mandy. Joey said this to our parents when he was in second grade of elementary school. At the time, I was in the highest class of kindergarten. According to hospital regulations, preschool children had to be accompanied by a parent for the duration of their hospital stay. Once I reached elementary school, it wasn't necessary for my parents to be with me constantly, theoretically allowing Joey to have their undivided attention. Yet, his harsh attitude towards me and his grievances persisted. Even after moving on to middle school, where I struggled to fit in and make friends, Joey ridiculed me when he saw me alone. Haha, can't you make even a single friend? This is what you get for being coddled by our parents since you were a child. Being alienated at school was bad enough, but receiving such harsh words from Joey was even more painful for me. After graduating high school, I chose not to pursue college or vocational school but to work from home. My experiences of not fitting in from elementary to high school played a part, but I was also intrigued by the world of finance, which I had read about in newspapers and magazines while hospitalized. By high school, I had developed a yearning to become a day trader. Initially, my parents were concerned about my career choice. But after persuading them, they encouraged me, saying, "Since it's the path you've chosen, give it your all." Meanwhile, Joey was far from supportive of my decision. "What? You're not going to college and will work from home? Isn't that essentially the same as being unemployed?" He would say such things, always looking down on me. However, Joey, who went to a private college, never worked part-time and always found reasons to ask our parents for money. It's about time you earn your own spending money. Really, Joey? You should stop relying on our wallets. Our parents would advise, but Joey refused to listen. Yeah, I get it. But there are people who live off their parents' support, right? He would say, deliberately glancing at me. At least I'm going to college, which is better than her. It's unfair to say only I should work. To what Joey said, my mother kindly replied, "That's not true. Mandy is earning a decent income and supporting our family's finances. You can get your allowance because Mandy is contributing to our household." What? How can you think that a shut-in like her who stays in her room all day can earn that much? You have always spoiled her too much. That's why she's such a failure now. No matter how much my mother would say, Joey wouldn't listen. But if I said something, he would just get angrier, wanting to avoid conflict. I just quietly listened to his words. "I'm really sorry, Mandy." "It's okay, Mom. I don't mind at all." After Joey returned to his room, our mother, looking guilty, apologized to me. I didn't want to make her worry about sibling issues. Seeing me act cheerfully, she expressed her gratitude and patted my head. That was enough to make me happy. Joey continued to enjoy his carefree college life and moved out after graduating. During that time, we didn't hear from him, and our family continued to live a peaceful life. However, as time passed, our parents aged, and our house, now 30 years old, also started to show its age. "Mom, Dad, the house is getting quite old. Maybe it's time to think about renovations." "Yes, we've been feeling tired more easily lately, and the house is showing its age. We've been thinking about renovations. Considering the future, we need to be cautious about finances." In response to our parents' serious conversation, I continued, "Don't worry about money. I have some savings, but you should save that money for your future. Don't worry, you both always supported me when I was in trouble. Now I want to help if I can. Please let me repay you." Against their objections, I decided to renovate our home to make it barrier-free. We were spending peaceful and serene days with our parents until a recent incident changed everything. "Hey, Mandy, don't just space out. Bring some coffee quickly." The person sitting boldly on the sofa in the living room was none other than Joey, whom I hadn't seen in 2 years. As soon as he returned home without notice, Joey started treating me like a servant. Wow, is this the shut-in Joey was talking about? Who stays holed up at home all day long? The woman with heavy makeup next to him was his wife, Vanessa. Despite it being her first visit, Her brazen behavior was clear proof that she and my brother shared similar traits. I know, right? By the way, are you still not employed? Don't you have any self-awareness? My brother mockingly insulted me. That's none of your business. Besides, what brings you here all of a sudden? Not liking my confident response, Joey quickly got to the heart of the matter. We've decided to move back into the family home. What? I was shocked by Joey's declaration. With our parents aging, it's only natural for me, the eldest son, to live with them as they might start having difficulties. That might be true, but it's unnecessary because Mandy is here. My mother gently declined Joey's offer, but his wife and he seemed dissatisfied with the answer. What are you talking about? We can't rely on such an incompetent person. That's right. Why don't you live with us? Plus, we need to leave our current apartment by the end of this month, and we'll be moving in next week. Looking forward to it. Saying this, Joey and his wife left. Mandy, I'm sorry, but until Joey and his wife find a new place, could you stay and live together? I understand. It's fine with me. Thank you. Living with Joey and his wife was, to be honest, not pleasant. Still, I decided to endure it until he found a new place. Days later, Joey and Vanessa arrived with loads of luggage and quickly began to claim their space in the family home. As time passed, their belongings remained intact, and the house became increasingly cluttered. No matter how much my mother and I cleaned up, it would quickly become messy again. Vanessa, could you please put things back where you found them after using them? Shouldn't the person who finds it out of place be the one to fix it? Even when approached, Vanessa was too absorbed in her manicure to budge. Joey would make excuses about being too busy with work to help with house chores. Mother, this dinner is a bit bland. I prefer something more fancy. Every meal, Vanessa would complain without lifting a finger, criticizing the food my mother prepared. Exactly. Mom, why don't you make steak or beef stew instead? Joey and Vanessa would start to voice their complaints together. If you have complaints, you should cook for yourselves. What? Did the shut-in say something? Joey, Mandy, stop it. I'll reconsider the menu, so please be quiet. Mom. When I reached my limit and confronted Joey, he turned his anger toward me. This kind of exchange became a daily occurrence, suffocating the atmosphere at home. Moreover, Joey and Vanessa made no effort to contribute to the living expenses. Despite my financial contribution to the home renovation to ease my parents' burden, Joey and Vanessa's wastefulness only increased it. Unable to overlook this, I asked with frustration, Joey, how's the search for a new home going? What? I'm still looking. Stop nagging. Joey snapped back with a hostile tone. Hesitant for a moment, I knew backing down would only embolden his arrogance. Find a new place quickly and move out. Our parents can't keep this up. When I firmly responded, Joey suddenly stood up and yelled, You've always been completely dependent on our parents. It's you who keeps causing trouble for our mom. Stop blaming us without recognizing your own faults. When I criticize my brother, Joey, who keeps staying at home, he turns around and blames me instead. I am working properly and contributing to the household finances. When I argue back, Joey snorts in derision. What's the point in being proud over such a trivial amount? Ultimately, as the eldest son, I will inherit this house. If you have a problem with it, then just get the hell out. Really, if you weren't here, we could live more comfortably. Joey and I will take care of the in-laws, so you don't need to stay here anymore. Just get out. Vanessa also sneers coldly, looking down on me. After all, it's obvious that our excuse of just until we find a new place was a lie. Since we've been accepted as family, it's your loss. So, get out of here. Joey waved his hand at me as if to shoo away an annoyance. Their attitude brought my anger to a boiling point. It was because of the money I earned that Joey and his wife were able to live comfortably, yet they refused to acknowledge this fact and insulted me, treating me as if I'm unemployed. By now, my sympathy for them had completely vanished. Fine, I'll leave. When I said this, Joey and his wife smiled with satisfaction. Mandy, are you okay? Having witnessed everything, my mother asked me worriedly, "I'm fine. Actually, there's something I want to talk to you about." With that, I proceed with a plan I've had for a while. Weeks after leaving the house, I received numerous calls from Joey and Vanessa. Initially, I ignored them, but due to the excessive number of calls, I finally answered. "What's going on here? Where have Mom and Dad disappeared to? They haven't returned from their trip." Joey began to speak urgently. "We're running out of food and I need to get some allowance from Mom and Dad. Do you know where they are?" I was infuriated by Joey and Vanessa, who were more concerned about their meals than the fact that our parents were missing. Seeing this moment as an opportunity to retaliate, I answered calmly, "Mom and Dad are with me right now." "What?" Joey was at a loss for words at my response. From the other end of the phone, I could hear Vanessa causing a fuss. "By the way, I wanted to say something. How about becoming independent and stop relying on your parents' support?" "What?" When I echoed the words Joey once directed at me, he raised his voice in indignation. "Why are you and Mom in the same place?" "Why?" "Because we've moved." Joey's irritation towards me increased in tone. Unable to watch this exchange any longer, Vanessa on the other end started speaking. "Mandy, could you lend us a hand? We're running out of living expenses." To Vanessa's request, I responded firmly. "Why do I have to support you? I have no responsibility to save you strangers." "What are you talking about?" Vanessa raised her voice, but I responded without flinching. "Also, I've decided to sell the house, so you'll need to leave by the end of this month." "What?" Vanessa was surprised at the unexpected announcement. "Wait a minute. What do you mean you're selling the house?" To Joey, who was puzzled, I conveyed the facts calmly. "Because I have no intention of living there anymore. Not living here, but that's our parents' house. Why would you get to decide to sell it?" "The reason is that I paid the $500,000 renovation cost in full, and during the renovation, Dad transferred the house to my name. But since you and Vanessa drove me out, with our parents' consent, I decided to sell the house." "What? $500,000? Yes, you treated me like an unemployed leech, but in reality, I've been working as a day trader, earning over $10,000 a month. That much." Joey was shocked by the truth and lost for words. Faced with the precariousness of their situation, Joey and Vanessa suddenly changed their attitude and began to plead. "Mandy, I truly apologize from the bottom of my heart. We deeply regret our mistakes. Could you give us just one more chance to live together warmly and peacefully as a family?" Joey proposed with an unprecedented frail voice. In response, I gave a derisive sneer similar to how Joey once treated me and rejected his proposal. "After all this time, you talk about family? I don't know how much effort you've put in, but how can I share the same space with someone who graduated from a third-rate university, works at a third-rate company, and chose a third-rate spouse? But at least let us talk to Mom and Dad. I'm begging you." Joey pleaded desperately, but my parents, listening through the speaker, silently shook their heads, quietly refusing his request. Through this exchange, the deep rift within the family became apparent, highlighting how fragile our bonds had become. After these events, it seems my parents had decided to sever ties with Joey. In a desperate situation, Joey appealed, "Please help. Our savings are gone, and I don't know how to make a living from now on," with tears in his voice. Despite his earnest plea, recalling the years of insults and cold treatment, I felt no sympathy for him. I told him calmly yet firmly, "You're in this situation because of your own actions. I want to cut off ties with you, so please leave the house by the end of this month." Just as Joey was about to respond, I cut off the call, maintaining control over my emotions. As a result, Joey and Vanessa had no choice but to leave the house. Their unplanned and wasteful lifestyle had caught up with them, depleting their savings, and Joey's income alone was insufficient to cover their living expenses. Eventually, they found themselves in a modest apartment, facing extremely tough times. Meanwhile, our family was enjoying a happy and comfortable life in a newly purchased barrier-free condominium. We spend our days enriching both mind and body, relaxing in the condominium's hot springs or borrowing books from the in-house library. My parents are very satisfied with this new living environment, and with deep gratitude to them, I continue to give my best at work every day. You are lucky, you know. All you have to do every day is housework. As a full-time homemaker for a family of 5, my husband constantly hurls insults at me. He seems to think I'm just lazing around at home, not doing anything and living an easy life. But that is far from the truth. I am in charge of everything in this house. When I glare at him with a stern look, my husband just smirks with even more contempt. What's with that look? You're living off me and yet you're quite defiant. Parasites living an easy life should just listen to what I say. Parasite? How can he say something so insensitive? At those harsh words, tears of sadness and frustration spill from my eyes. Seeing my state, my husband sighs with annoyance. Oh, come on. A crying parasite? What a nuisance. My name is Hillary. I'm 28 years old. I married Tom, who is a year older than me, 2 years ago. After getting married, we moved in with Tom's parents. In addition to Tom's parents, his brother, who is around the same age as Tom, also lives with us, making it a household of 5. My living situation changed drastically after marriage, and although I was initially anxious, Tom's parents and brother are very kind people who treat me well. Despite often hearing negative opinions about living with a spouse's family, it doesn't apply to me at all, and we've built a good relationship. Now, as a full-time homemaker, I take on all the housework in this home. Before marriage, I worked at a company, but Tom's parents asked me to become a full-time homemaker, so I quit my job. I've always enjoyed cooking, and since my parents both worked, I often helped with the housework when I lived at my parents' house. Therefore, I happily accepted Tom's parents' suggestion and am now desperately managing the housework for 5 people. The house is large and there are many of us, so it's tough, but I also feel a great sense of fulfillment. Thanks to Hillary taking on the housework, I can focus on my work with peace of mind. I'm truly grateful. My mother-in-law often expresses her gratitude. While I feel a bit uncomfortable with my mother-in-law thanking me so much, she smiles and says, "It's natural to express gratitude because you're protecting the home when no one else is around." Before marrying Tom, I heard from him that his mother was very strict. My mom can be quite scary when she's angry. It's better to just follow along and not say anything strange, Tom advised me when we were newlyweds. However, when I'm doing housework and have questions, my mother-in-law kindly teaches me. Indeed, my mother-in-law is strict, but living with her, I've come to see her as a sincere and compassionate person who dislikes dishonesty. I deeply respect her, considering she used to manage the housework in between work before I moved in. This is because Tom's family runs a business. Tom's father is the president of the company, and his mother holds an important position there. Having started the company together, Tom's parents possess significant business skills and seem very busy every day. Yet, despite their busy schedules, they take turns doing the housework on their days off to care for me. Tom's brother and Tom himself also work at their father's company. Being a large corporation, my family is essentially a successful one. Tom's brother is good at his work and has a pleasant personality, and he often helps me with the housework. I truly feel blessed to have such a family. Since getting married, I've thought I live in an environment without any complaints. But there's just one issue I haven't been able to confide in anyone. That issue is my husband, Tom. Before we got married, Tom was as kind and dependable as the rest of the family. However, since we started living together after marriage, his attitude began to change gradually. One night, after coming out of the bath, Tom threw these words at me. "Hillary, I can't find the shirt I'm wearing tomorrow." "Where is it?" "Sorry, I haven't finished ironing it yet. I'll give it to you once I'm done." "Huh? Why didn't you do that during the day? You had time, didn't you?" Perhaps because no other family members were around, Tom clicked his tongue at me. I did feel bad about the delay in ironing the shirt, but I had been out shopping for groceries during the day and didn't have time. Even if I tried to explain, Tom probably wouldn't listen. Tom seems to think being a full-time homemaker means living an easy life at home. Therefore, he looks down on me for not working, and his attitude towards me has clearly changed since I became a full-time homemaker. However, only Tom treats me with such disdain. Tom's parents and brother help me when I'm in trouble and express their gratitude, saying thank you, always. The rest of the family naturally does these things. During these days, Tom began to make derogatory remarks about me being a full-time homemaker without the family noticing. It continued every day, and though I hoped he would come to understand, my wishes were in vain as things only got worse over time. One day, Tom came home early in the evening, claiming he had left work early, and started complaining after checking the state of the house. "Hey, you haven't even folded the laundry yet? You're always slow despite not working. What have you been doing all day? And heat the bath early. I'm tired from working all day. I've obviously been doing housework all day. That laundry is still drying, and preparing dinner is my top priority right now. Normally, the bath would be ready by the time you get home. It's only because you came back suddenly without notice today that I haven't started it yet." When I retorted, Tom snorted. "All day just for housework? How inefficient can you be? You've just been staying at home, haven't you? If you had cleaned the bath earlier, all you would need to do is fill it with water. How dare you speak so arrogantly?" I wish he would understand me a little, but Tom doesn't listen at all. Any counter-argument I make only comes back at me doubled, adding fuel to the fire. One day, as I endured Tom's ongoing criticisms while doing the housework, he came home from work apparently in a bad mood and, seeing me folding laundry by myself, clicked his tongue loudly. "You're lucky. All you have to do every day is the same housework. Whether something unpleasant happened at work or not." He took out his frustration on me. Knowing that talking back would only amplify Tom's anger, I continued folding the laundry in silence. Then, feeling ignored, Tom stomped over to where I was and kicked the folded laundry forcefully. "Hey, what are you doing?" As Tom shifted his gaze from the messed up laundry to me, he snorted and laughed. "Is it really worth getting so angry about? Just fold them again. I'm not just sitting around with nothing to do. I have everything scheduled, like preparing dinner and heating the bath. With all the tasks I have, this throws off the whole schedule, doesn't it? Then you should just do it faster," Tom said coldly, looking down on me. When I glared at him sternly, my husband smirked with even more disdain. "What's with that look? You're living off me and yet you're quite defiant. Parasites living an easy life should just listen to what I say." "Parasite?" I was so taken aback by his rude words that I was at a loss for words. I couldn't understand how he could say something so insensitive. I had been called various things by Tom before, but being called a parasite was the last straw. Tears of sadness and anger spilled from my eyes. Seeing my state, my husband sighed with annoyance. "Oh, come on. A crying parasite? What a nuisance." As Tom was laughing at me with contempt, suddenly, the living room door swung open. When we looked towards the door, my mother-in-law entered with a furious expression. "Mom, welcome back." Tom, surprised, greeted her with a forced smile, but my mother-in-law glared at him with an unprecedented anger. "Tom, what did you do to Hillary?" I looked up at my mother-in-law while wiping away my tears. It seemed she had heard Tom's verbal abuse. Tom fell silent, trembling with a pale face. This was the first time I had seen my mother-in-law so angry. Indeed, Tom had told me before that his mother was strict and could be scarier than anyone when angry. Tom had always tried not to anger his mother, but this situation was unavoidable. As Tom looked down, trembling, his mother prompted him with a cold voice. "Can you hear me? Hillary is taking care of our home every day, and what did you say to her?" My mother-in-law continued, scolding Tom in a calm yet angry tone. Even I flinched at the intensity of her anger. This was the first time I had seen her so angry, and I was just shocked. "But she's not working, and she's just living off us." If she's not working, she should at least do the housework. Tom snapped back as if coming to his senses, yelling at me, "What's wrong with calling her a parasite?" Hearing the word parasite again, tears welled up in my eyes. Seeing my state, my mother-in-law was outraged and scolded Tom, "Stop it." Hillary being a full-time homemaker was our request. She could have continued working, but she quit her job for us. Do you realize how grateful we should be for her to move in and live with her husband's family right after quitting her job? We once hired a housekeeping service when you were in elementary school, remember? But when we asked them to do everything, it ended up costing a fortune. Hillary is doing all those difficult tasks every day without a day off and without pay. Because Hillary takes care of the house, we can focus on our business. How can you not understand that? Despite my mother-in-law's attempt to reason, Tom refused to understand. It seems he thinks I'm just idle at passing time at home. How can I make him understand? While I was pondering this, Tom's father and brother also returned from work. It seems they heard the scolding voice of my mother-in-law at the entrance and were surprised by the scene unfolding in the living room, with Tom's father asking, "What happened? Hillary, were you crying? Tell us what happened." Tom's brother spoke to me and patted my back. When my mother-in-law explained the situation, both Tom's father and brother became furious upon learning of the events. Even when confronted by 3 family members, Tom raised his voice, seemingly unable to accept it. Why? Why is everyone taking her side? Tom, enough. You don't understand Hillary's struggles at all. Even Tom's usually quiet and reserved father scolded him. Despite his father's anger, Tom remained undeterred. Anyone can do housework, right? There are plenty of women who work and do housework in this day and age. Why is she getting special treatment? Then, my mother-in-law's expression hardened and she gave Tom a cold look. You really don't get it. From now on, you'll do everything for yourself. What? Tom was taken aback by his mother's command. I was also speechless. But then my mother-in-law turned to me with a smile. Hillary, from now on, you don't have to worry about Tom. Don't prepare his meals, do his laundry, or anything else for him, she said, pointing at Tom with a smile. As I was bewildered, Tom's brother agreed. That's right. Let him experience the hardships you've been through. Tom protested, that's just going to make her lazier. It's unfair, but his father shouted, silence. If you think it's unfair, then show us an example. Work and then come home and manage the housework properly. Then, we'll consider asking Hillary to work as well. My mother-in-law continued with an attitude that left no room for rebuttal. Perhaps overwhelmed by the pressure from the 3, Tom reluctantly accepted his mother's directive. Since then, I've been doing the household chores for everyone except Tom. Tom, it seemed, had his pride. At first, he awkwardly managed the housework with a show of confidence. It was the first time I saw him doing housework, and I was surprised. I thought, he can do it if he tries. When cooking, he looked confused at times, but I did not offer my help. Tom's attitude suggested he didn't need my assistance. Sometimes he seemed dissatisfied with his own cooking, possibly because it wasn't very tasty. Watching him, I suddenly remembered how Tom used to enjoy the meals I cooked before we were married. Lately, he hasn't complimented my cooking, leaving me feeling a bit sad. Then, one weekday night, damn, I forgot to iron. After taking a bath and getting ready for bed, Tom muttered in frustration while holding a wrinkled shirt. He glanced at me briefly, but I deliberately ignored it. I'm tired, so I'm going to bed first. Good night. I thought to myself it might seem cold, but lending a hand now wouldn't change anything. Afterward, Tom managed to keep up with the housework for a while under the watchful eyes of his mother and the rest of the family. However, it seems he couldn't keep it up for more than a few weeks and finally reached his limit. Hillary, sorry, I need help, he pleaded with me in a wary voice. Though Tom had been putting on a brave face, it was clear that after working hard from morning till evening every day, he had no energy left for housework. Moreover, he seemed to think that housework was just about preparing meals, doing the laundry, and occasionally cleaning, neglecting the finer details like ironing shirts and taking care of bags and shoes. It appeared he finally realized that the housework he thought was simple actually took up a significant amount of time. I finally understand that you were always taking care of me in many ways, Tom murmured weakly. Because I took care of his surroundings, he was always able to present himself cleanly and focus at work, something he finally appreciated. I was thinking about hiring a housekeeping service because it was too hard, but then I realized how expensive that would be. I now painfully understand what Mom meant when she said you are taking care of our home, Tom said with an almost tearful expression. The housework I do isn't just about cooking for 5 people, doing laundry, or cleaning. It includes taking care of each person's commuting bags, shoes, watches, and preparing higher quality suits for important business meetings, among other things beyond ordinary chores. Also, organizing and categorizing the myriad of contacts from relatives, friends, and classmates to maintain the image of a successful business family is part of my job. This is why Tom's parents couldn't just hire a housekeeping service. Having strangers see potentially sensitive company documents was a concern. In this respect, I am a family member and don't cost anything. That's why they pleaded with me to take care of everyone in the household as a full-time homemaker, offering to give me a generous allowance for living expenses. Tom deeply apologized to me. I'm really sorry for all the terrible things I've said. I really am sorry. I want to eat your cooking again, Hillary. Receiving Tom's sincere apology, I finally smiled back. It seems you've learned your lesson well. Then, I heard my mother-in-law's voice and looked over. Tom's parents and brother were standing at the door, looking at us with a mix of astonishment and bemusement. My mother-in-law shrugged her shoulders and addressed Tom. Just as Hillary has supported you, from now on, you should also support Hillary. Both work and housework are important, and you shouldn't act arrogantly or look down on your partner. Tom, looking bewildered at first, took her words to heart and nodded earnestly. Since reconciling with Tom, I have been diligently managing the household chores to support my family. Tom, no longer displaying any contemptuous attitude towards me, said, "We have days off from the company, but Hillary doesn't. Isn't that unfair?" He began helping with housework actively so that I would be able to have days off as well. Thanks to this, I've had more personal time for shopping, watching movies, and relaxing. Recently, I went out for lunch with my mother-in-law, enjoying a wonderful time together. Our relationship has deepened through this incident, and we're even planning a girls' trip, leaving the housework to the men next time. It'll surely be a meaningful trip, and I'm excited like a child. Despite my worries at one point, I'm grateful to be blessed with such a wonderful family.